Have you never felt that the teaching you received, regardless of the spiritual path you followed, sometimes contained lies, often inconsistencies? That these stories, passed down with fervor through the ages, resembled more an endless reinterpretation of immemorial myth than a path toward transcendence? Or that these spiritual principles were more a pile of rules than an invitation to escape the materiality of the world? And if the names of the gods have changed over millennia and from one religion to another, their natures all seem to have been designed to regulate our existence and that of those who came before us. This divine control ultimately serves more the grandeur of the kingdoms, empires, and civilizations that follow one another, rather than the grandeur of our soul. And if the Creator we were told to pray to was not the ultimate source, and if, instead of showing us the light of the sun, we were shown its reflections, its shadows, its emanations, and if this quest for light concealed a deeper truth, a path not toward an imposed God, but toward an original, timeless, immaterial understanding. For the Gnostics, the monad is this source, this ultimate reality. Let us try, together, to understand what it represents and why this feeling of belonging, like an anamnesis, has ultimately always been present, buried deep within our being. This idea of a transcendent unity, of an original divine light, has traversed the history of human thought, marking the first man, the first civilization, and enduring into contemporary philosophies. Over 5,000 years ago, in ancient Egypt, Atum, the creator of the universe, was already a central figure. He represented the original unity, born from the primordial nothingness, the noon, a sort of ocean of potentialities before the creation of the world. Atum creates everything from himself, thus embodying the idea that everything in the universe stems from one single divine source. This notion of the One as the original of all things foreshadows the later concepts of the monad. Among the Persians, 1,500 years before our era, Ahura Mazda was the incarnation of divine unity and pure light. Even today, in Zoroastrianism, Ahura Mazda is the supreme God, creator and benevolent, source of everything good and luminous in the universe. Ahura Mazda represents cosmic order, and his opposite, Angra Mainyu, the evil spirit, embodies chaos and darkness. Thus, the concept of the One in Zoroastrianism rests on the idea that all creation emanates from this original divine light, and that humanity must strive to align its will with this light against the forces of darkness. Between 1500 and 500 BCE, in the Upanishads, foundational texts of Hinduism, the concept of Atman, the individual soul, and Brahman, the universal soul, reflects a primordial divine unity. Brahman is the ultimate essence of the universe, the absolute unity, beyond all form and individuality. Hinduism's spiritual teaching rests on the realization that Atman and Brahman are one and the same reality. This revelation leads to the liberation, moksha, a return to original unity. Around the 3rd century CE, in the philosophy of Plotinus, founder of Neoplatonism, the concept of the One is central. The One is beyond all material reality. It is the origin of everything that exists, an absolute and transcendent principle, source of all beauty and all reality. In his writings, the One is both infinite and indivisible, and it is distinct from everything that is sensible or intellectual. The goal of the human soul is to draw closer to this One, to rediscover original unity. In 9th through 12th century Sufism, a mystical tradition of Islam, the concept of Tawhid, the unity of God, is at the heart of spiritual thought. Sufis believe that divine unity is the ultimate goal of the human soul, a process of returning to divine light. Rumi, the Sufi mystical poet, often evokes the idea that the soul seeks to unite with the divine light, transcending the materiality of the world. The spiritual quest is seen as a journey toward unity and divine love. The Jewish Kabbalistic tradition, from the 12th century onwards, influenced by Neoplatonism and Christian mysticism, speaks of Ein Sof, the infinite divine light that precedes all creation. Ein Sof represents absolute unity, without form or limits, from which everything emanates. The spiritual journey consists of perceiving the One in all things and reconciling with this eternal light, transcending the material world. In 13th century mystical Christianity, Christian mystics like Meister Eckhart also developed the idea of divine unity in their spiritual quest. For Eckhart, the human soul carries within it a divine spark, and union with God resides not in external worship, but in inner fusion with the One. The goal is to transcend the dualities of earthly life to rediscover original unity with the divine. In 17th century philosophy, Baruch Spinoza stated that God and nature are one and the same reality. Deus sive natura, God or nature, expresses this cosmic unity, where God is not an external creator, but the very essence of the universe. Every part of the universe is an expression of this unique divine substance, and man finds inner peace by recognizing this unity. Finally, in contemporary philosophy of the 20th and the 21st centuries, in modern esoteric movements such as those inspired by Theosophy or the New Age, we also find the idea of a universal divine light that connects all beings and all things. These currents often speak of cosmic unity, the interconnection of all beings, and the spiritual quest as a return to this original divine source. Thinkers like Pierre Teilhard de Chardin also proposed the idea that humanity is evolving toward a divine unity and a cosmic collective consciousness. This historical reminder is not a relativist attempt, but demonstrates that the idea of unity and a return to divine light and balance has ultimately always haunted our relationship with the sacred. As for Gnosticism, It structured itself at the same time as Catholicism, from the 2nd and 3rd centuries CE onwards. It emerged as a radical vision of the world, breaking with the orthodox teachings of nascent Christianity. The Gnostics believed that the material world was an illusion, a prison for the human soul, and that only the true teaching of Jesus could lead to gnosis, an inner and spiritual knowledge, allowing one to free oneself from the materiality of the world and discover the original divine light. And this light they called the monad. Their approach to divinity and creation contrasted radically with that of the Catholic Church. The first major point of conflict lay in the nature of creation and the Creator God. For the Gnostics, the material world was created by a demiurge, an inferior and defective being. This being, whom they call Yaldabaoth, traps the soul in the body. In contrast, the Catholic Church, influenced by the letters of St. Paul and the 4 Gospels, considers that God, as the unique and perfect creator, created a naturally good material world, and that redemption comes through the reconciliation of the soul with the divine. This dualistic Gnostic vision, which rejects matter as intrinsically evil, thus contradicts the Christian idea of a divinely ordered creation. The church fathers, such as Irenaeus of Lyons, played a crucial role in the repression of Gnosticism. In his work against heresies, Irenaeus vehemently denounces the Gnostics, accusing them of distorting Christian teachings by introducing secret initiatory knowledge, which subverts the universality of Christian revelation. According to Irenaeus, Gnosticism undermines the unity of coherence of the Christian message because it claims to offer a truth reserved for spiritual elites, far from the open and accessible message meant for all. Beyond these theological divergences, there was a political dimension to the repression of Gnosticism. As the Catholic Church sought to establish a unified central doctrine, the Gnostics, through their pursuit of personal and secret knowledge, challenged ecclesiastical authority. Orthodox Christianity, which was gradually structuring itself under the authority of the Church Fathers, perceived Gnosticism not only as a spiritual heresy, but also as a threat to the Church's growing order and authority. The Catholic Church had, at all costs, to maintain its monopoly on religious truth, and this involved the elimination of Gnostic teachings. This repression took several forms. Ecclesiastical councils, such as that of Nicaea in 325 CE, banned Gnostic ideas and affirmed Christian orthodoxy. Gnostic writings were systematically destroyed or hidden, and the Gnostics themselves were persecuted, accused of heresy. From that point on, Gnosticism began to disappear from the official history of Christianity. It was only much later, with the discovery of the Nag Hammadi manuscripts in 1945 by 2 Egyptian brothers, Mohammed and Ahmad al-Saman, that Gnostic writings were rediscovered, thus allowing a re-examination of the spiritual and theological richness of Gnosticism. These texts, like the Gospel of Thomas and the Apocryphon of John, shed new light on how the Gnostics conceived the relationship between the human soul and the monad, and how they sought to transcend the limitations of the material world. But what is the monad? What is the Pleroma? And how is the latter structured? How could man forget his divine origin? And how can he find the path back to the light? In the Apocryphon of John, from the Greek apokryphos, secret, hidden, John is the apostle of Jesus, more precisely the John of the Gospel, often identified as John the Evangelist. In this Gnostic text, John is the narrator of the mystical revelation he receives directly from a divine entity. This entity is a manifestation of the Pleroma, probably of the Aeon Christ, who appears to him in three different and changing forms. The form of a child, representing the innocent and pure aspect of revelation, the form of an old man, symbolizing ancient wisdom, often associating with maturity and a deep understanding of the cosmos mysteries. Finally, the form of a servant. This form, probably the humblest, reflects an idea of divine service, the way divine light places itself at the service of humanity, transmitting the knowledge necessary for spiritual liberation. This divine entity then begins to describe to John the monad, from the Greek monas, meaning unity or one. Before seeing what the monad is, let us see together what it is not. It is not a creator God. Moreover, it is not possible to think of it as a God or as any similar being. It is not a being with personality, preferences, or a cosmic plan. It has no form, no edge, nor even a will. It is certainly not the God of the Old Testament, who creates the world in 6 days and rests on the seventh. It did not create humanity to trap it and banish it from the Garden of Eden. So what is it? In the Apocryphon of John, the divine entity describes the monad as a spirit possessing omnipotence, the sacred breath, the invisible that embraces everything. The monad, or the one, is a principle over which no one rules because no one existed before it. The one is the illimitable light, not in the physical sense of the term, but in the sense of illumination. The monad is immaculate illumination. It is consciousness, the one that is beyond time and consequently encompasses everything that is and everything that will be. Before all things, before all form, it is. There is neither beginning nor end, neither space nor time. The monad is not a being one prays to, but it is the consciousness that makes the very idea of prayer possible. It is the matrix, the substrate of all things. Before any fracture, before any fall, the monad rested in its own fullness, and the thought it had of itself became an act and manifested itself. Thus, from this inner gaze was born Barbado, the first thought, the first radiation of the divine, the first presence issuing from the invisible. In the Apocryphon of John, this first thought is called pronoia, from the ancient Greek pro, meaning before or previously, and noia, from nous, meaning intellect or thought. Barbado is its incarnation, its emanation. She is the radiation unfolding from this divine wisdom, constituting the first aeon, the first emanation of the One, of the monad. At this point in the narration, it seems interesting to explain the word emanation. In the Apocryphon of John, Barbelo emanates from the One. She is not created. This means she proceeds from the One, like a light emanates from an infinite source. Barbelo is therefore the monad otherwise. She is another expression of the monad, a direct transmission of the divine essence without alteration. The word creation, on the other hand, implies the emergence of a new reality or a new materiality. For the Gnostics, this distinction is primordial. To understand it better, we can draw a parallel with eternal fire. From this fire emanates heat, a natural expression of fire, just as Barbelo is the divine expression of the monad. And the instant Barbelo emanates from the monad, the Pleroma comes into being. This moment of emanation marks the unfolding of divine light, the emergence of the perfect realm where everything is still unity and harmony. The word Pleroma comes from the ancient Greek Pleroma, meaning fullness, completeness, or feeling. It is derived from the verb plero, meaning to feel or to complete. The term thus refers to a divine fullness, to the idea of a state where everything is filled with light and perfection, and nothing is lacking. The rest of this process differs according to Gnostic currents. We will focus on the Thetian tradition, as this has not often been explained. This tradition is based on the Apocryphon of John. In this view, Barbelo addresses the divine unity, the monad, asking it to emanate four essential divine principles. These principles are not external creations, but natural and necessary emanation for the cosmic structure of the Pleroma. Thus, Barbelo asks the monad to emanate knowledge. This knowledge, or gnosis, represents the principle of divine wisdom, the pure intellect that allows one to understand the nature of the One and the hidden structure of the cosmos. It is the light of truth that reveals the path towards divine reconciliation. Then she asks for the emanation of incorruptibility. Incorruptibility is the divine aspect that escapes loss or degradation. It is eternity incarnate, the aspect of divine unity that remains intact despite any form of change or transformation in the material world. Then comes the emanation of eternal life. Eternal life is the principle of infinite existence. It represents the infinite nature of divine light, a life that knows neither birth nor death, but remains always present, a vital force that traverses all existing forms without ever being altered. Finally, the emanation of truth. Truth is the ultimate aspect of the divine reality, the total and perfect understanding of the universe. It is divine illumination that reveals what is hidden, what is beyond appearances, the essence of divine unity unfolding in light. These four principles form the foundations of divine reality and structure the order of the Pleroma. Each principle is emanated from the monad, and their deployment creates a perfect spiritual universe in which every aspect of existence is a reflection of this original light. Together with Barbelo, they are the 5 androgynous aeons, and together they form 5 pairs, each masculine and feminine, 5 syzygies that constitute the 10 aeons of the Pleroma, forming the perfect balance between masculine and feminine. Then the one looked into Barbelo, and she was covered by its radiation. From this shared radiation emanated the only begotten Son. The only begotten Son prayed the monad to grant him intelligence, and intelligence came to be. Thus he became autogenes, meaning the one who generates himself, Christ. The one raised him as a collaborator, established him as God, and placed him above all things. And with Christ, the divine world no longer merely emanates, it begins to order itself. The invisible spirit, the One, emanated 3 other aeons to help Christ organize the Pleroma: thought, will, and life. Then he brought forth 4 angels, the 4 great luminaries of the Pleroma: Armozel, Oriel, Davethai, and Eleleth. They are not simple secondary figures, but the great foci of light, divine hypostasis around which the divine fullness structures itself. Around each of them are deployed 3 additional aeons. Thus, the Pleroma presents itself not only as a succession of emanations, but as an harmonious architecture, where each power receives its place and reflects in its own way the perfection of the source. Around Armozel radiate grace, truth, and form. Around Oriel are deployed conception, perception, and memory. Around Davethai appear understanding, love, and idea. And around Eleleth stand perfection, peace, and wisdom. Thus take place the 12 aeons who assist Christ the self-generated. The divine world then appears not as an empty or abstract space, but as a living, intelligible, ordered totality where each emanation manifests an aspect of the first light without ever separating from it, and in a perfect masculine-feminine balance. For the Gnostics, this balance between feminine and masculine is crucial. Indeed, in the various Gnostic traditions, the Pleroma is seen as a perfect universe where masculine and feminine principles are in harmony. The divine unity, the monad, engenders these complementary principles to create the necessary balance for divine existence. Autogenes, the key figure in Sethian Gnostic traditions, is the first example of this masculine-feminine balance. The advent of Christ is only possible with the creation of the first syzygy, formed by the only begotten Son and intelligence. Autogenes thus represents the idea that perfect unity within divinity, divine emanation, can only be achieved through the unity of masculine and feminine. Finally, in the myth of Sophia's fall, her attempt of autonomous creation engenders the demiurge, a distorted creation that leads to the cosmic fracture. This shows that in Gnostic traditions, the absence of feminine-masculine balance in the creative process can unbalance the divine order and create distortions in creation. The great mystery of the monad is that it is everything at once, indivisible and present in all things. It is not limited to a space or a time. It infiltrates every aspect of reality. everything that exists. Everything, every being is a manifestation of this divine unity. The Gnostics teach that the human soul, like other forms of life, is an emanation of the monad, a divine spark imprisoned in the material world, seeking to find its origin. This divine unity manifests itself in the material world, but it is never reduced to matter. It follows the return path, guided by the inner quest of the soul, a quest toward divine light which is none other than the original unity. The human soul carries this divine light within it, but it is hidden under the veils of matter and the world's illusion. The monad, being the source of all light, is also the key to the return to light, the return to unity. In Neoplatonism, Plotinus spoke of this light as a pure emanation of the One, which unfolds in the world in different forms, but always returns to its source. The light of the good, or of the One, descends and multiplies, but each fraction of light naturally seeks to return to its original source. The One, the monad, is not just an abstract idea, it is a profound reality that lives within each of us. The human soul carries within it the divine spark of the monad, a fragment of this eternal light. But this light is often hidden, obscured by the veil of matter and human desires. The archons are charged by the demiurge with turning us away from this divine light. Knowing them and being able to identify their fields of interaction appears salvific. The goal of the spiritual quest is to escape the illusion of matter and awaken this inner light, to recognize the monad that is within us and return to this original unity. For the Gnostics, the human soul, although fragmented in the material world, is always connected to the divine source. This bond can be re-established through gnosis, the spiritual knowledge that allows the soul to reconnect with the original unity. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus declares in John 70, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you. If you do not have that within you, what you do not have within you will kill you." Thus, the monad is both the source of everything and the ultimate goal of the spiritual quest. It is the original essence that sustains the universe and resides in every human soul. Everything that exists comes from the monad, and everything will return to it. This original light is not merely a philosophical or theological truth, but a living reality, a hidden light that illuminates the soul, guiding it on the path toward reconciliation with divine unity. In this quest for reconciliation, the Pleroma plays a central role. It is the divine fullness, the spiritual realm where unity and harmony reign, before any division or fall. It is the sacred territory where all divine emanations, the aeons, interact in perfect complementarity, forming a cosmic balance between masculine and feminine principles. The Pleroma is not only the seat of the divine, but also the model toward which the human soul must strive, seeking to regain this lost original unity. The Pleroma is not an abstract concept, but a state of light and wisdom. Every soul that manages to understand the profound truths of the Pleroma attains divine unity. rediscovering its primordial essence, its own inner monad. This is where true reconciliation resides, where the soul merges into the original light, guided by divine emanations and illuminated by the light of truth. The spiritual quest, in its depth, becomes a journey not only towards the monad, but also towards the restoration of the Pleroma within oneself, a return to the divine unity that resides both beyond everything and within us. Thus, in the Apocryphon of John, one can read, "I am the one, and everything that is in me. Whoever seeks me will find me, and will find the light of the one."